the worst thing that a community can have is a sickness more sinister than cancer, and that's hopelessness. I think that pastors and community leaders have got to inject hope back into the conversation to say to a Black America, we've been down before. We've been behind the eight ball before. We have had vicious attacks before, but there's never been a fight that we've showed up to that we've lost.
There are some people who preach sermons, and then there's some people who step into the middle of the storm. My guest today has never been afraid of the storm. From organizing young people through the NAACP to building churches that became movements, to speaking out on voting rights, economic justice, housing, and the future of Black political power, he has consistently challenged both the church and the country to live up to their calling. But what makes him compelling is not just what he says, it's the tension he's willing to sit in. He's deeply spiritual, but unapologetically engaged in the public square. He talks about faith, but also ownership. He preaches salvation, but also strategy. And whether people agree with him or not, he refuses to be silent in moments that demand moral clarity. Today, we're talking about the Black church, activism, political power, young people, economic justice, and what leadership looks like when the stakes feel this high. So pull up a chair for a conversation I think a lot of folks need right now. Please welcome to At Our Table, Pastor Dr. Jamal Harrison Bryant. Doc, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Honored to be with you. I am so grateful for the privilege.
Oh, it's so good to be with you. And I'm just so grateful for all that you do each and every day, because really to see your fight, to see you stand in this, to see how straight your spine is when it relates to some of the things that we're going through right now, it really gives many of us hope. So thank you for that.
Honored to be a part.
So let's start off by going into your background. You grew up in Maryland, right?
Yes, Baltimore.
Baltimore, Maryland. And for a lot of folks who may not know, I mean, they look at you and you are this amazing scholar, you're an amazing thought leader, you're a spiritual leader. But you started off, you were expelled from 2 high schools, and then you got into Morehouse on a GED, then you went on to Duke and Oxford. That's not a straight line.
Yeah.
So what was the turning point that set you on the path that you're on right now?
My father was a part of the first group of the Peace Corps, and he spent 2 years teaching elementary school in Liberia. When I failed the 11th grade, he sent me to Liberia to serve as a missionary. Liberia, for the listeners who don't know, is a country in West Africa founded by former slaves. Liberia means land of liberty. When I went, Jaime, there was no public schools. All of the schools in Liberia were private. This is 1988.
Wow.
And so there were people in the 6th grade who may be 14. There were people who were in 3rd grade who may be 12, not because they were held back, but because that's when their family had money to go. And so people were amazed, Jaime, you're not going to believe it, how was I failing school for free when they saw education as a privilege?
Wow.
And so it really was a turning point for me to understand what was the value of education. I came back here, and an old deacon at my home church was a Morehouse alumnus and said, there's an early college program at Morehouse. I think you would benefit from going. I went to the early college program, Jamie's true story. At the end of the early college program, the director, the dean of student life, Dean Crawford, said, young man, I'll see you back in 2 weeks. I said, you're not going to see me in 2 weeks. I said, I failed grade, so I got to go home to do that grade over. And the dean of admissions drove me to Atlanta Technical College and sat with me to get my GED.
Wow.
Which is why I trumpet HBCUs. And so I am proud. I am the first person Morehouse ever let in with a GED. And so that was really a transformative moment for my life.
And such a tremendous model for so many young men and young women out there who, you know, it's about taking the steps necessary to do what you need to do, and you did just that. Now, your father was also a bishop, right?
Yeah, bishop at the AME church.
Did you always know that the church was your calling, or was there a moment of resistance before you accepted that this is what I need to do?
Everything you've ever heard about a PK, that's me. So I'll leave everybody to their own interpretation. Uh, so I knew that I was called, but I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. I am a fourth generation preacher. My grandfather was a bishop in the AME church. My great grandfather was state moderator for the Baptist Convention of South Carolina. And so I knew that preaching was in me. And because that was expected of me, I was kicking against a prick. I did everything that I was not supposed to do. So it's the life of a runaway slave. I came full back, full throttle. So yeah, I knew that I was a preacher, but I put in my mind I'll be a preacher and not a pastor.
And why not AME?
Well, I was AME up until 5 years ago when I came to
Okay.
Atlanta.
Okay.
When Bishop Long died.
Yeah.
But coming up through the NAACP, my mentor was the Honorable Kwesi Mfume.
Love Mr. Mfume.
Yeah, he made me his National Youth and College Director at the NAACP. And strangely enough, in 1999, at our national convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, President Mfume came down with strep throat and asked me to give the address on his behalf.
Wow.
I got in USA Today for the very first time because of that. It was my big moment, but it was a life defining moment. I came off of the stage and the crowd went wild. I come off the stage and waiting at the foot of the stage was Dick Gregory. And Dick Gregory grabbed me by my collar, put me up against the wall, and said, "Boy, you are out of place." Jaime, I'm running through my head on what I said in the speech,
Yeah.
what I said wrong, where I dropped the ball, and I couldn't figure it out. And Dick Gregory, who I only knew from albums in my parents' basement,
Uh-huh.
I had never met him. I didn't know him at all. But those who know him know he was not a church guy. He didn't have much confidence in the Black church at all. He grabbed me by my collar, put me up against the wall, said, "Young man, you're out of place. You're supposed to be a pastor."
Wow.
You're talking about life-defining moments. And so 6 months later, I resigned from my position at the NAACP. I started my church in Baltimore, and Jaime, Dick Gregory came my first Sunday.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, it came my first Sunday and took up the offering that day. Yeah. So nothing of my whole life's pattern has been normal or regular. It has always been the Star Spangled Banner. So I'm just grateful for my steps.
Well, when we think about your time at NAACP, organizing 70,000 young people,
Yeah.
what did that teach you that the seminary didn't or couldn't?
Well, the seminary didn't ever teach organizing,
Mm,
uh, leading with no assembly required.
yeah.
And so I am the National Youth Director during the East Coast West Coast rap rivalry.
Wow.
I am there during the killing of Notorious B.I.G. And Tupac. Tupac and I grew up together in Baltimore. Was introduced to me from my sister. They went to school for the arts together. What a lot of people don't know is Tupac went to Clark Atlanta University, came out after our freshman year while I was at Morehouse. And so trying to navigate young people that violence is not the way, that we've got to
Mhm.
use that energy and more purposeful and productive ways was a Herculean task, to say the least. And so it really helped me. Had I not learned how to organize, I would have never known how to start a church. So all of the breadcrumbs have come together. That helped me even for organizing now. When the fight of our lives, how do we get young people back engaged in the democratic process, to know that voting is a viable option? I go back to what it is that the NAACP taught me in my formative leadership years.
Well, I mean, and that is so, so key and so important. And we know how key and important the Black church has been in politics, in general. But I want to spend some time talking about the Black church in today's politics as well. Now, you've said that preachers have lost their prophetic voice.
Yes.
What happened? Was it comfort? Was it being co-opted? Was it fear, or was it something else?
Yeah, I think we went from community advancement to individual achievement. And so in our grandparents' era, Jaime, somebody did well, they affixed to them, you are a credit to the race.
Yes.
Now, if somebody does well, so-and-so did it. So-and-so got this, but it is not connected. So we lost that sense of community. And so as a consequence, the theology changed from community development to personal acclamation of what can I get, and what it is that I want. So we stopped praying about the community at large and praying for what our desire, what our wish list was. And then a lot of people who were practitioners of liberation theology didn't go on television, didn't embrace social media. And so there are always lamplights in the community who are doing it, but they did not find themselves canoeing down the river of where the culture was. If you look at Jaime, in the state that you live and in the state where I live, the overwhelming majority of the churches that you visit or speak in, your constituency base, the overwhelming majority of those churches stream on Facebook. But 97% of Gen Z is on TikTok.
That's exactly right.
And the overwhelming majority of Black churches are not. And so we're speaking to an audience that doesn't even know we're talking. So I think that there's got to be a reanalysis of where we are and who it is that we're speaking to.
Are you taking any leadership right now in trying to migrate some of our churches and some of the church leaderships to understand that this is, you got to go to where the puck is going and not where the puck is?
Yeah. So in my grandfather's age, radio was of the devil.
Yep.
My father's age, television was of the devil. In my generation, internet was of the devil until COVID. When COVID came, apostolics went online, Pentecostals went online. So the new frontier that I think the church has a role and a responsibility in is introducing our congregation to AI, and how that impacts not just the community, but our congregation, of how it is that we disseminate information. Here's the reality, and I speak only from the Black church, that this is the information age, and a lot of our Black churches are just emotion driven. So there's nothing for you to write down, nothing for you to learn, nothing for you to ascertain. It is just about a feeling. And a generation that is looking to learn something wants to know, okay, what are the complexities of the Bible? Don't just give me a coloring book and tell me to do Noah's Ark. Tell me how Jesus died and rose in 3 days. Why that's not Monday? If he died on Friday, why is resurrection not on Monday? Why is baptism important, and how is that different from conversion? What's the difference between an apostle and a disciple? And one of the things that went wrong, Jaime, is we stopped doing Bible study and started doing midweek service. So a lot of young men are listening to 5%ers and Hebrew Israelites because they want information.
They want to be educated.
They want to be educated. And one of the small nuances that happened, Jen, when we were growing up, the pastor had what we call the pastor's study.
Yes.
But now they have the pastor's office, which is two totally different things. So when you went in the pastor's study, it was books all on the wall. I knew what pastor was reading. I saw where his degrees were or her degrees were. And now it is just a place of transaction of business, not of scholarship and study, and really a wrestling about what is the depth of the text and what is the practical application.
Dr. Bryant, I never even thought about that, but you're so right. That transition also is a different mindset. You know, we want to so move quickly and advance. We sort of leave out some of the things of the past that were so necessary and so key,
Yeah.
and we kind of forget about them.
Yeah, no, I think we've got to go back to basics. Pew Surveys did a poll that young people are coming back to church in record numbers, and they're not looking necessarily for LED screens or smoke machines or flashing lights. They just want sound biblical teaching. And I think that our churches are going to have to go back to it, of really giving people the basic principles and keys they need to navigate this space called life.
Yeah. And that's such an important point because, you know, a lot of people are wrestling with this in terms of bringing young people back into the church and trying to identify the problem. And one of the issues you said is the education. What is another problem that the church is facing right now? Is it a relevance problem? Is it a trust problem? Is it a leadership problem? Or is it a little of all three? Is it just different depending on where you are and what your church is?
I think it's all of those. I think that a lot of our churches are not, John Maxwell said, there's no success without a successor, that we're not raising the younger generation to take the place. Why should all the deacons be in their 60s?
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, the young men at the church, their only job they can find is to be a part of security ministry or media. But nothing in terms of a spiritual foundation. So I think that we've got to begin preparing the next generation of leadership for the church.
Pastor, I want to talk about, you know, where we are right now, with all of these major court decisions coming now. But before we even get there, you have some pastors that are saying we have to keep the pulpit spiritual and we have to stay out of politics. How do you answer that?
That they only ask that request of Black pastors. White evangelicals are largely responsible for this administration being in place, and they did so unapologetically. They really came out of the locker room and said, okay, we want the administration to agree on two things: that they would oppose abortion and same-sex marriage.
Yep.
Everything else we'll turn a blind eye to. But this will be, quote, restoring faith values. And so they ran on those tenets. And when the Black pastors operate in a prophetic voice, then they are shunned and scrutinized, saying that they're out of place. I have, in all of my life, I've always been socially active and civically engaged. I've never had as much hate mail in my life. I've never had as many threats in my life, Jaime, until from my pulpit, I pushed back on the false comparison of Charlie Kirk being this generation's Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And so we had demonstrators outside of the church. I had to get my phone number changed. Ultimately, I had to move. All of our social media pages were bombarded with those calling me a heretic, and somebody who was against the faith. And all of this, mind you, around a blogger. We pulled the flags half-mast in states across the South. They said that they were going to name streets and make it a part of the curriculum for Turning Point. And we couldn't even get half of that done in the passing of Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
So,
They wouldn't even allow Reverend Jackson to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol.
yeah. So I think that the pastor has historically always been that voice. 70 years ago, the Montgomery bus boycott, a small detail that people forget is while we know Rosa Parks, we know what Dr. King, what we don't highlight enough is that every day for a year, they met at a church
Mm.
to to give buoyancy to their faith and to give direction. So the church became the epicenter of the movement. And so I think that the church is going to have to find its voice again and find its backbone to be able to speak truth to power with all that is taking place in the culture.
Well, speaking truth to power, this recent Callais decision, which in essence guts the crown jewel of the civil rights movement, which was the Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
And that decision strikes at the heart of Black representation in the South. And I've been telling folks that if they have not read Congressman Cloburn's latest book, The First Eight, they need to get that book. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to read it
No, I'll
yet,
pick it
Pastor.
up.
Yeah, but pick it up because in that he talks about really the height of Black political power in this country, the first height, which was during the period of Reconstruction. Yeah, and he talks about the various states, the numbers of Black folks that went to Congress then that were historical numbers. In South Carolina during that period, we had 8 Black members of Congress go to Washington, D.C. to represent South Carolina. At one point, Dr. Bryant, South Carolina had sent 4 of the 5 members of Congress were Black. We had a Black Speaker of the House. We had a Black Lieutenant Governor, a Black Attorney General, and the legislature was majority Black.
Yes.
And all of that disappeared when Jim Crow came back. And it took almost 100 years from the number 8 Black congressman to the number 9 Black congressman, and Jim Cloburn's the number 9.
Yes.
So the Callais decision strikes at the heart of Black representation in the South. And as a pastor whose church sits in Georgia, what does a ruling like that mean to your congregation on a Sunday morning?
Meg Evers, our slain martyr for civil rights out of Mississippi, killed in his own driveway for trying to mobilize Mississippians to register to vote, set up for the NAACP a tripod. Voter education, voter registration, get out to vote. A lot of what we have been doing in contemporary times has just been get out the vote.
Mm-hmm.
We have missed voter education.
Yes.
The Bible warns our people died from a lack of knowledge. And so I think that pastors in a nonpartisan way can instruct people, these are the issues. If we got any seniors here, stand up. Do you want health care? We have any young people here who plan on going to college and you don't want to spend the next 30 years on student loans? Stand up. If we've got any Black mothers who are expecting, and you look at what is the infant mortality rate that is happening in America, stand up. If I have any veterans who are in the place who are fighting just to be served after giving years of service, I think what has happened, Jaime, as a detriment to us is over the last 25 years, we have focused on personalities over policies.
Yes.
It's about who speaks the best, who's the greatest orator, who's kissing the babies, and who came to visit my church. But we're not arguing policy. And I think that in this era, we're going to have to really unpack what are the policies that are at stake. Kwesi Mfume said, we have no permanent friends, just permanent interests. And whoever aligns with those interests is our friend. And I think that we've got to go back to that.
When the legal system dismantles a tool like a majority Black district, what do you think is the faith community obligation in response? What would you coach or advise your fellow clergy to do in this moment as we move into this probably one of the most important midterm elections of our lifetime?
Yeah, Adam Clayton Powell, one of the most successful congressmen in U.S. history, representing Harlem, used to say, keep the faith, baby. Coming right behind that, 30 years later, was Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive. Barack Obama, 20 years after that dealt with the audacity of hope. The worst thing that a community can have is a sickness more sinister than cancer, and that's hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are in 50 shades of gray right now, thinking all is lost. Do we wave the white flag? But we got to keep the faith, keep hope alive, and find the audacity of hope. And so I think that pastors and community leaders have got to inject hope back into the conversation to say to a Black America, we've been down before. We've been behind the eight ball before. We have had vicious attacks before, but there's never been a fight that we've showed up to that we've lost. And so that now we got to dig in, roll up our sleeves. I know that we all wanted the Walt Disney interpretation of believing we were in a post-racial society, but we are not.
We're not.
Racism is very much real and alive and rearing its ugly head.
Well, one of the things I want to spend some time with you on is, we often hear in church, as we read the Bible, faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think people should know is that your church is about the work. You are doing the work, and you're doing the work in areas that are really, really important for your parishioners, and I think the Black community and as a whole. But I particularly want to highlight the work that you are doing in affordable housing.
Yes.
You have this project called the Benison, right?
Yes.
Walk us through the vision of the Benison, which is mini homes, townhomes, seniors, retail, a medical clinic, all on church land. What does that community look like when it's fully built? And what was the vision that you had for this?
So let me give context for our viewers. I pastor New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Stonecrest, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. I am proud that we are the largest land-owning Black church in America.
Wow.
With over 300 acres. Jaime, I came to the church in 2019, and all we had was a mega church and a gym. And I asked the leaders, what message are we saying to the community? Are we saying that all we're good for is to run and to jump and to shout, but not doing any real community development? Desmond Tutu, in his autobiography, said at the end of every year, the poorest people in the community should vote to see whether the church is open the following year.
Wow.
If that vote happened, Jaime, a whole lot of churches would be closed.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we have been working tirelessly to build affordable, or what we want to call is obtainable houses.
Mm-hmm.
And so in these obtainable houses, we're building almost 100 micro homes that we're building for millennials. And Gen Xers to recreate the conversation of generational wealth. I'm excited about it. There's a housing deficit in Atlanta Metro that we want to rise up to meet. Our second phase will start in February, and I'm excited. It is going to be a landmark project that has not been seen in the United States. This is the very first time, Jaime, in American history, there are more 60-year-olds than 16-year-olds. So our seniors are the largest growing demographic in this nation because of health and because of medical advancements. People are living longer and fruitful lives. We're building senior housing starting in February, and it'll be the first senior housing in America for seniors who have custody of their grandchildren.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was raised by my grandparents.
I was getting ready to say, Jaime, 1 out of 5 of us were raised by our grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And unless it's Section 8, children can't live in senior housing. When it is such a critical part of the culture of who it is that we are as a multi-generational dynamic. When we finish that,
and Pastor, on that note, that is also one of those policy points which our elected leaders need to understand culturally about our community in particular, right?
Yes.
If we know that our seniors are raising their grandkids, but yet their Section 8 funding that they have
Yep.
won't allow them to keep those kids in their housing. That's a fundamental disconnect, and that's a problem.
Oh, no, it's a huge, huge problem. And again, education is still key. Piece of
Yes.
legislation Jamie just went through from this administration saying you can no longer get benefits if you're taking care of somebody, if you're living with somebody who has Down syndrome, who has dementia, Alzheimer's. It's going to impact 400,000 Americans. That you are almost penalized for operating as family. And so what is happening is going to be so critical, so necessary. Next month, we're opening up a medical clinic on our campus that is going to be powered by the Atlanta Medical Association, which is a conglomerate of Black doctors who are
Wow.
going to be serving our community. Black people are dying from curable diseases. The overwhelming majority of Black men only go see the doctor when they're walking through the emergency room.
That's it.
We want to move that taboo around healthcare and around mental health as well.
Doc, that is absolutely fantastic, and what I hope this becomes is a model for what other churches and other communities can do to replicate your efforts, because that's what's needed and so necessary in many of our communities right now, particularly when I think about some of these, communities, rural communities or places where, the rural hospitals have closed and but you have large pockets of folks who just need housing, need medical attention, but they just can't get it.
No, it is what Dr. King called the urgency of now.
Yeah,
We don't have the space to wait. Look at the warp speed that Louisiana, Tennessee, and Alabama moved in to begin redrawing lines. We didn't have time, Jamie, to have a robust conversation about gun control. Haven't had time to really have a conversation about Gaza. No real conversation about what's happening in the Congo or how to refortify the country of Haiti. But within 7 to 10 days, they were able to come out with new maps. People make time for what is important for them. And I think that we've got to see that time is of the essence for us as well.
and that's such great work. And again, I hope other churches and other community organizations will see what you are doing and try to replicate that across the country. But you've also taken leadership in other spaces as well. When you have seen things that have not been great or, policies by corporations and groups that have been targeted at African Americans in the African American community, you have stood up to say, "Not now, no way, we're not gonna have it," and that was part of your leadership with the Target Fast effort that you worked on as well. In your own words, can you talk a little bit about, what Target Fast was, what the boycott was,
Yeah.
and just give us a sense of how all of that evolved and what you believe, we got out of it.
Yeah. So the Target boycott was started by some amazing Black women.
Mhm.
I called them and said, I want to find a lane for the Black church to participate because the Black church for over 25 years has not been front facing around social justice and civil rights issues. Uh, when you look at from Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray, to George Floyd, it wasn't the church that was spearheading those movements or those campaigns. The Black Lives Matter movement was the very first time since the Black Power movement that we had anything take place that was not birthed out of the church and was
Mm,
not led by a faith leader. And so the messaging that gave to young people was the Black church doesn't know how to support what it doesn't lead.
wow.
And so I said for 40 days, Ash Wednesday to Easter, let's call collective churches to not go into Target, not support Target. Remember, at that time, Jaime, is the exact same time people were demonstrating against Tesla.
Yes.
Yes. President Trump, then said it was a felony to be able to boycott or to touch a Tesla. It was primarily Caucasians who were protesting Tesla. So I said, no way in the world can I let Black people find themselves endangered. So I said,
That's
you don't
exactly right.
need to protest outside of Target. And Jaime, I want to salute your viewers and let them know 350,000 people signed the pledge.
Wow.
And said that they were not going into Target. Because of our efforts, Target lost $12 billion in their valuation. Foot traffic went down, and history will record it was the strongest boycott of Black people since the Montgomery bus boycott. So I am grateful, I'm thankful, and I'm appreciative for those who walked alongside and saw the vision.
And what are you most proud of in terms of how this was organized? And if you had to do it differently, what would you do differently?
What I would do different is give a clearer demarcation between the fast and the boycott. And a lot of people amalgamated and made it one when they were two different things.
Two different things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we went 40 days. We started out for 40 days and ended at 400 days. And I said, okay, we've come to an end. And people thought we had forsaken the movement or had walked away from the pledge when we went 10 times longer than what it is that we intended on doing. Furthermore, I think that we did a poor job of educating a culture who did not know firsthand boycotts. Jaime, I am afraid the generation doesn't know the difference between a boycott and cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, when we came to the end, said, I'm never going back. No matter what they do, I'm never stepping foot in there. Well, if you have that resolve, we have nothing to negotiate with. We have nothing to come to the table. Negotiation means you have to give some, they have to give some. And so if we were going to cancel Target, then that should have been the declaration, not to
From the start.
because those
Yeah.
are two totally different things.
Yeah. So what do you think this campaign teaches Americans, but not just Black Americans, but Americans about the real power of organized consumer action? And I know you're also now turning your sights on Dollar General.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that as well, if you can.
Yeah, we have long since heard about the Black community having $2 trillion worth of spending power, that we are the 11th wealthiest nation in the world, but we've never seen it in collective works. And so I think that the Target Fast movement opened our eyes to see what was possible, what was doable, and what was achievable. In the history of the civil rights movement, we've never boycotted one owned establishment and pointed people to another white owned establishment. So when we started boycotting Target, everybody said, let's go to Costco. And so in these 70 years, embarrassingly and ashamedly, we had never set up a big box store that was Black owned. And so I think that it says a lot to the space that we still need to occupy and what it is that we need to do in terms of community development. Jamal Bryant says that the next step after civil rights is silver rights.
Yes.
That this is a financial war that we're in. Dr. King said, what's the point of us integrating the lunch counter if we don't have money to have a hamburger? And so I think that we've got to really talk about economic development and achievement and acquisition is the next frontier for all of us.
And any insight on Dollar General? Because you're calling on an electronic protest, not a boycott. What does that mean?
What people don't realize, Jaime, and it's going to be mind-blowing for you, Dollar General has more stores than Walmart and Target combined. The problem that we have, and you would know in your space greater than mine, when we talk about the Black community, we almost always just focus on urban areas.
Yep.
We ignore the muscle
rural
that we have in
communities.
rural communities.
That's exactly
Dollar
right.
General is primarily in rural areas.
And it in some rural areas, because I remember when I was running for the U.S. Senate, I would talk to some of the rural mayors,
Yeah.
and they would say, there's no grocery store near them, and Dollar General is the only thing that they have that's almost an equivalent to a grocery store.
And when I don't have access to a grocery store, to a supermarket, depending on where you're from, uh, all I have is Dollar General that's giving me processed food. It speaks to not just the food desert, but also to the health crisis.
And then, so you are calling for an electronic protest. What does that mean?
It's a little bit more difficult, Jamie, and we're building a plane in the air because it becomes harder for people in rural areas when that is their only option.
Yeah.
As you've just intonated and underscored, is I'm not saying, okay, stop going to Dollar General and go to A&P or go to Publix or go to Kroger. For many, that is the only outlet for 23 miles. And so I think that we've got to really do some heavy lifting. Dr. King said sometimes when you can't change minds, you got to change hearts. And I think that we've got a responsibility to change the heart of Dollar General because they're not interested in changing minds.
You have your finger on the pulse of using our economic power to make change. Do you think this is something that we should explore in this post-Calais world that we are now in, particularly in the South?
No, I think that we don't have an option.
Mm.
Huey Newton said, "We're not outnumbered; we're outorganized." And so I think that we've got to figure out. I'm already sitting down with my executive team at the church. What do we do when gas goes to $7 a gallon and my average parishioner drives 25 minutes to get to church?
Wow.
Do I go completely virtual? So these are the kinds of conversations that I'm having to have because I don't pastor a community church as much as I do a regional church.
No, regional church.
Yeah, and so I think that we can't play checkers when they're playing Madden.
Mm. Well, Pastor, before we let you go, we got one tradition on the show, and I'm a little nervous about this because it's called the SYAD Award.
Okay.
Now, usually that stands for, excuse my language here, the Sit Your Ass Down Award.
Yes.
But out of respect for the caller today, we're simply going to say it's the Sit Your Audacity Down Award.
Yes.
So, Dr. Bryant, who this week made you say, my brother, my sister, enough, please sit your audacity down?
Without second place, I want to give this trophy. The SYAD Award
Oh, I love it.
goes to Clarence Thomas.
Oh.
Who is the beneficiary of everything that he has fought against, has walked through every door because of it, and then locked the door behind him. And so my prayers are for Clarence Thomas. And I said to my community, we don't have any more Uncle Toms. We just got Uncle Clarences.
Oh, wow.
And so we've really got to remember that Jeremiah Wright was correct. Everybody who's your color is not your kind. And so this award goes unanimously to the dishonorable Justice Clarence Thomas.
And to think that man sits in the seat of Thurgood Marshall,
Yes,
it's just
it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. It is embarrassing. Well, Doc, final question for you. You have spent your life trying to move people from spectators to participants, and you've done it spiritually, politically, and economically. What gives you hope that this next generation will not just inherit this moment, but actually transform it?
On social media, there's a trend hashtag, I am not my ancestors. And I think it is the greatest insult. I'm glad to be the continuation of my ancestors. The spark of
Amen.
hope for me is people like Justin Pearson in Tennessee.
Yes.
As like Dee Dee in Alabama. Young people are not waiting on the baton. They're taking the torch and setting it ablaze. And so I think that we are in the middle of the Civil Rights Movement 2.0, and new faces are about to emerge who are really going to take it by the jawbone and cry loud and spare not.
Well, Dr. Bryant, you definitely stand on the shoulders of greats, but your shoulders are extremely broad, my friend, and you're building it so that so many in this next generation can stand on your shoulders and continue that great tradition that we have in our community. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you're doing. Half of my family lives in the metro Atlanta area.
Oh, nice.
My mom, sister, uncles, aunts, cousins, and so they all talk about the work that you and your church does in the community. So thank you for that, and thank you for being not just a regional leader, but thank you for being a national leader, speaking out and fighting and pushing back.
No, it's my honor to be with you, and thank you for who you are for our generation. And thank you for your unwavering conviction and being uncompromising about liberty and justice for all. Glad to be with you.
Well, thank you, my friend. If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pixel Plus, or anywhere you find your podcasts. For bonus content and analysis, join our community on Substack at jamieharrison.substack.com. At Our Table with Jaime Harrison is a production of Vision Blue Media. Our founding executive producers are Jason Hyder and Jaime Harrison. Our producer is Callais. Our content consultants are Ernie Grigg and Clay Middleton. Our digital communications are led by Lauren Brown. Our social media strategist is Nia Asanta. Inez Malasky provides production legal. Title sequence by Tom Hunt. Our theme song, Blonde Gone, is written by Dewey and published by Alibi Music Library. Special thanks to Dr. Jamal Bryant and his team. I'm Jaime Harrison, and I look forward to another conversation at Our Table.